has to do with expressing oneself from one's African heritage and showing pride in that, but some has to do with just seeing beauty in nature. Some has to do with relationships we have in this society, the whole spectrum. But I think the main point is that a lot of these artists, no matter what they're painting, they have a sense of confidence in knowing that they have a very, very rich heritage that they can be proud of, and they can express themselves from that root.
This is a really good segue into the next question I wanted to ask you. And it's related in part to a documentary which you were interviewed, Artists of the Bahamas. You said that the thing about art is once you learn something and get the sense of really knowing how to do it, you throw it out the window and start from scratch again. And you described the paint and the artist as having a rhythmic conversation, essentially that they're in the same band, and the paint is the rhythm section and the artist is supporting it. So you mentioned this idea of artistic freedom that younger artists have today. And in that documentary, you said, and you kind of expressed this feeling of experimentation that you enjoy seeing how the paint wants to behave, and you kind of let it do what it's doing. So in that vein, you have this sense of artistic freedom. But do you think that having that sense of artistic freedom, and you mentioned that younger artists now have that sense of freedom, do you think that having that sense of freedom to let the art express what it wants to express, let the paint behave how it wants to behave, do you think that that is a precursor to kind of owning that voice that lets them express something that may not be in line with what society wants us to think?
Expand on that some more for me.
Right. So what you mentioned is that now these young artists ain't scared of nothing, right? But is having that sense of artistic freedom that they have without kind of going through, it sounds like the pains and the struggles that the previous artists, like artists in your generation, may have gone through. So not being told that your work is too black, they already have a sense of freedom. Do you think that having that sense of freedom then allows them or gives them sort of a broader interest in voicing, what they see as society's ills and not being afraid to do that?
Let me make myself clear. The young artists, they still go through the struggle. And to a great extent, there are many roads to lead to artistic fulfillment. However, every artist has to go through that dungeon of struggle, of how to perfect one's craft in order to make one's statements articulate, how to find one's voice and how to express that voice in a way that when anyone sees your work, they recognize it without even looking at the signature. How to find a way to, because we all Don Quixotes as artists, to find a cause that one can align oneself to say, I'm going to make a change in this world. And I'm going to make a difference, and even though that might be chaotic, the artist is always thinking that way. There's an artist here, Toby Lunn, and Toby was a student at College of the Bahamas years ago and has grown and developed his own style. But at the core of Toby is someone who loves people so much that it pains him when he sees conflict, and he has this dream of everybody getting along, and he's found a way to express that in his work. His work is abstract, but you can sense the harmony, the peace, the love, the encouragement, and everything in his work, And I think that this society gives him that license to express that trueness, Now, as I said before, I have a tendency to ramble and go so far away from the question that I forget the question.
You're doing a good job of creating some good segues, so that's fine.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
So I do want to ask you to that point. Do you think that the confidence in one's skills as an artist comes before you are able to express that idea, something that speaks out against a prevailing norm? Or do you think that this is something the artist has inherently? So essentially, is it nature or nurture?
That's a very good question. I think that in order to be paid attention to, the artist must have developed his craft to the point where he's taken seriously. There are lots of people with ideas and who can pick up paints and brushes and put their ideas on canvas, but are those ideas going to be articulate, So what I'm saying is that even though we love being able to express our ideas freely, we still have to learn how to use our material and how to express ourselves in an articulate manner in order to be understood.
And if that manner of expression is, let me rephrase, it's easier to be understood if it's a language that everybody understands, right? If it is something that is very easily accessible and palatable to a lot of people, it's easier for people to understand that. If it is something that is more raw in terms of its expression and emotion, it's a little more challenging to understand. So my question is, do you think that a formal art education, I'm not trained as an artist, but a formal art education, do you think that kind of enhances that ability to communicate that raw expression in a way that people can understand and, let's say, essentially becoming more articulate in their expression as an artist? Or does it sanitize it and make it that more palatable expression?
Don't get me wrong now. Raw is sometimes very articulate. Probably the best analogy is Muhammad Ali, who butchered the English language. He was chewing up the English language. He had no respect for punctuation or the laws of grammar or anything. However, few people were as articulate as he was. And so it has less to do with understanding all the fundamentals of art and being able to display the academic fundamentals in the work as it has to do with whatever gifts you have to be able to very clearly express the emotion that you want to convey.
So you are a classically trained artist, but you've done a lot of work and pioneering work in Junkanoo. And that seems to permeate your other disciplines just in terms of the shapes, the lines, and the use of color. What I was delighted to find out also is that you're a pioneering voice in the Afrofuturism movement. And I'm just curious about what led you to that. You're coming from the Bahamas. What led you to Afrofuturism, and how or has your formal art education and your experience as a John Canoe artist, just basically being in the shack in this collaborative process, influenced your voice and your style in that movement?
Well, John Canoe is Afrofuturism.
Elaborate on that, please.
Afrofuturism is art that takes the viewer back to Africa. Art that takes the viewer back to a celebration of one's African ancestry. So there's nothing more African than John Canoe. I have a theory about John Canoe, and that is that John Canoe is proof that the black people in the Caribbean, the black people in the New World, wherever they were taken as slaves, were never really slaves as in the Hollywood image of, yes, it bows, all of that. It never happened. When you see John Canoe, right? You see a cowbeller, for example. A cowbeller will shake a cowbell like a warrior. Like a warrior who has no fear, has no lack of confidence. Nobility. Cowbell is like this. That's the way they ring the bells. And beat the drum like this. And there's none of this kind of spirit. And that tells me that our people were never broken. Our spirits were never broken. And so when we go out on Bay Street, Arlene Nash Ferguson has this expression that when a John Canoe artist goes and puts on a costume, they're saying, I come to get me.
I come to get me, right.
And what that is you are saying that I am still African, and nothing has broken my spirit. And no matter what you try, and they've tried many different ways to break us, they didn't succeed. They didn't succeed. And so Afrofuturism is just any art that expresses a celebration for the African diaspora of one's African heritage. And so there's a broad spectrum of that in the Bahamas, the sacred spaces that Antonius does with the women, looking towards Africa mournfully. John Beadle and the work that he did with the cutlass and, going in the field and working. My brother Jackson, who created a painting called Nation's Navel that has to do with celebrating the way Bahamians form communities like Africans. They have a neighborhood where the women, while they're hanging out clothes, they have a whole community where they discuss the affairs of the day. And then there's Tavares Strawn, who is doing some incredible work internationally in that same vein, and always celebrating his Africanness, and always finding a way to tell the stories of our people that are not being told, always finding a way to celebrate those of us who have achieved so much and who have contributed so much in this world, and their contributions have been erased. So he's found a way of bringing them to the fore. So all of that is Afrofuturism.
I'm glad that you mentioned Tavares because you're like a mentor to him.
I'm just older.
Okay, but still, even if you look at in terms of the movement, the Afrofuturism movement, Tavares's work, it often is a bridge between colonialism and like a scientific approach to the future. But there's always that component of, if you look at it through the lens of people of African descent. So, and I think his work is very interesting. In terms of a voice, a Bahamian voice, in that global movement, what else do you think that you're seeing in terms of other younger artists or other artists that have their work displayed on a global stage that are kind of incorporating some of these Afrofuturism elements?
Well, I see so much work that impresses me in that direction. I don't want to start calling names,
okay.
But I mean, there's a whole cadre of young Bahamian artists. I mean, once I start calling names, I mean, I see a few in this audience,
in the building.
Who are doing world-class work. And because they have mentors like Antonius and Heino and John and many other people, and they're supported by, the Aguilar Foundation, the National Art Gallery, and Don Davis Collection, and all of those other major institutions that support individual artists. They have opportunities that didn't exist when I first came home in 1979. When I first came home in 1979, there were just a few Bahamian artists practicing who were full-time artists. Just a few. There was Max Taylor, Brent Malone, Alton Lowe, and maybe a few others. And since then, I mean, you have an explosion. And of course, nowadays we have galleries that literally take the artists around the world, like the Turn Gallery and what John is doing here. And, so, I mean, this town is wide open, and certainly as an older artist, I look at the present environment, and I know that many of the artists who laid the foundation are smiling at what they see.
This is very reaffirming. I hope we're all kind of absorbing all of this. This is pretty amazing, that answer. And in that vein, Stan, I want to ask you that when you look at the current landscape and the proliferation of Bahamian artists over the decades, do you think that they are effectively serving as keepers of the culture and kind of shedding light on those critical issues in our society? And are there any examples where you feel like local art is or Bahamian art has really resonated and sparked conversations around things that they can do to change it?
I don't want to criticize any artist who is speaking his truth, his or her truth, and they're developing their voice and they're finding their way or their niche. Everyone isn't going to be as black as I am. Everyone isn't going to be as resourceful as Antonius is. Everyone isn't going to be as energetic as John Cox. Everyone isn't going to have the heart of Toby Lunn, you know, but I think they can find, they can find their truth and express it with confidence, you know. I don't put any limits on what the artist can do. Now, me personally, I find myself as a black man feeling obligated to make a statement about our circumstances. You know, that's only me personally, because I believe that we have been getting fucked forever. And even now, there's a tendency to talk about, things are getting better and all the rest of it. I've had a whole lifetime of hearing that shit, And I remember years ago I went to Liberia, and where I was staying in a place called Bushrod Island, 24 hours a day, every 15 minutes, there would be a caravan of train cars with mountains of iron ore going into the harbor of Monrovia, Liberia. And the lights were on in the harbor. If you pass there, because I was partying in those days, go home 3 o'clock in the morning and the lights were still on, and the guys were shoveling the iron ore onto the freighters. And the freighters would be in and out. There were always like maybe 10 freighters in the harbor, taking iron ore in and out, in and out, in and out, man. And I thought about it, because Liberia is a very poor country,
Right, it is.
Then there was the rubber factory, Firestone and all of those places. They had all these brick houses for the people who worked in the Firestone factories, making billions of dollars of essentially slave labor, right? And that was in the 70s. Those things still exist, right? In the Bahamas right now, we probably have some natural resources that are being exploited and making billions of dollars for somebody other than Bahamians. And at my age, I have to express my anger at those circumstances, because they're not fair, and so many of us accept these circumstances, and we pretend they don't exist. If you give me a knighthood, I'll pretend and go along with the game, However, there's absolutely no reason for artists to be afraid of just expressing what they see. If they see the truth, who else is going to tell the truth to the people? I know when I was a cartoonist for years, people would always come up to me and say, "Aren't you afraid, man? Why ain't you afraid?" And I was too smart or too dumb to be afraid, So there's almost 3 million acres of land, crown land, in the Bahamas, right? Most Bahamians are poor and have no land. Why is there no discussion in sharing this land with the people to empower them? That's never, when I bring up that subject, people start to, push me out of the room because I'm creating unnecessary tension. So I'm saying that,
Questions, yes.
I'm coming back to just saying that is what I have in my heart to paint. Now, other artists have other ways of some of them see the same thing and they find other ways to try to affect change, you know? So it's up to them, you know?
So now I have a few questions. I think the first question is, okay, to the point about actually knowing the information, right? You have to know the information in order to determine if and how you're going to react to it. Do you think that we are exposed to less information about what's happening, and therefore, you know, fewer people are knowledgeable about it? And then from an artist perspective, you know, there's fewer artists who know about it, and therefore are in a position where they feel like they can speak out. Like you mentioned that you were outspoken. I think as an editorial cartoonist, you have a little bit more of a license, you know, in terms of satire to do that. But as an artist who is producing a work that someone needs to make a subjective decision about whether or not they like it or they appreciate it, that can be a little more challenging. So I think the question is, are we getting enough information about what's happening in order for artists to make a decision about whether they feel like this is something they want to speak out about? And two, what, in your opinion, are some of the barriers to speaking out? So if you consider that you are an outspoken person, right? What do you think for an average person who may not have had your upbringing, may not have had that sense of confidence instilled in them, you know, about who they are and their identity? If they don't have that confidence, what do you think are some of the barriers that are kind of in front of them in them finding their voice as an artist and speaking out about things that, you know, should make us angry?
I think the only barriers would exist in their own minds. You know, I think.
So when people ask you if you were not afraid with the cartoons,
Yeah.
what afraid of? Afraid of what?
They're thinking victimization. They're thinking that you rub certain people the wrong way and they make it more difficult for you to live. You know, I've been fortunate that you know, I've been blackballed in some areas, and other areas feel sorry for me, so they take care of me. So I would encourage young artists to be fearless, to be absolutely, I've seen some of the work, and I know that these young people are thinking, you know, they're digging deep, man. You know, I've seen the blood on the canvas of some of these young artists. They are not playing. And I would say that there are enough supporters here that you're not gonna fall. You know, some people might make it difficult for you, but there are others who will throw a lifeline. You know, there are a few galleries in this town who I think are very daring. You know, as long as the work is good, they will show it. And I think that this is the time now for these artists, you know, to help their countrymen, help their people. You know, this isn't the time for pussyfooting around, you know. If they do, they'll get to be my age, 78 years of age, and wonder what happened, you know, and why haven't things changed, you know? And the artists are usually the ones who are brave enough and crazy enough to tell the truth and to tell it to the powers that be, you know? And so if the artists don't use that power, are they really artists? You know?
That's a really good question, actually, for you.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Do you think that finding the voice to speak, you know, about things that they don't agree with in society, do you think perhaps, or do you think that voice is, I don't want to say stifled, but do you think that our reliance on tourism and tourists and a certain perception of the country, do you think that influences how bold artists are? And if we just for a moment expand from visual artists to, writers and singers and poets, do you think that where we get our money from as a country influences how they think about their work and the type of work they should be producing?
I think that used to be the case, but I think it's less so nowadays. There used to be a time when the artists were very safe. They would paint things, those touristy things, and things that, pretty things, and I have nothing against pretty things, right? But nowadays, I see them throwing down hard now, you know what I mean? And just coming from a spirit of truth. And the work is world class and it can't be denied. And I think that there are ways to exploit the tourist market without compromising one's art in order to do so. And I think the young artists, the majority of them have that.
Was there ever a moment in your career where you felt the need to self-censor for one reason or another? You may not have done it, but was there ever a moment that you kind of debated it for maybe external reasons, but did you ever have that kind of crossroad?
The self-censor, what do you mean?
Self-censor.
Self-censor. No, there was a moment when I started to realize that a part of our problem in this society as Black people was that we didn't understand that being proud of your Africanness doesn't mean you hate anybody else, and you could be proud of your Africanness, right? I started to debate with myself over how could I affect a change in the way Black Bahamians felt about Black Haitians. And that was a major, major thing that I went through in my own personal life. And I would like to do an exercise, if I might.
Sure. Yes.
I would like to ask everyone to just close their eyes. Yeah, everybody, just close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that you're sitting at a dining table, and across from you on the dining table is either a family member, a very, very close friend, or someone you love. Someone that you would die for, someone you consider to be so important to your life that you can't live without them. Okay, now keep your eyes closed and imagine 10 generations later, right? The descendants of that loved one and your descendants are meeting for the first time after not having seen each other for years. Wouldn't you like for those descendants to treat each other like family? Okay, now go back to that dining table, right? And imagine that this was the 16th century and the slave traders came in and took your friend to Haiti and you to the Bahamas. And now, 10 generations later, That's where we are now, with black Bahamians pointing to black Haitians and saying, those people, open your eyes.
That is really, I mean, that's a very, very powerful exercise. And it is something that's still, I mean, it's contentious up until today, isn't it? And so you created work around that?
A lot of my work, when I was going through this period of deep thinking about that subject, had to do with the celebration of Haitian heroes like Toussaint L'Ouverture and understanding celebration of a hero like Toussaint L'Ouverture and understanding the history of Haiti. And, you know, that's just a part of, you know, a small part of the whole celebration of one's ancestry. You know?
And so when you produce work like that, when you're making a statement on something that's been a part of our society, I mean, the immigration issue is definitely something that people feel passionately about, for better or for worse. When you make work like that, do you ever get any type of pushback when you make a statement that may be supporting a view that people don't share?
Not to my face, you know, but I'm sure there are people who have opposite opinions, you know. I grew up in a family and I was exposed to many Bahamian whites. There was a white family living next door to the Nixons. There were the Christophilises, there were the Malcolm Ray's family. There were so many white families who were patients of my dad's. He was a dentist on Bay Street. And I never saw them as anything other than nice human beings like the rest of the people in my life. So by the time I went off to college, I had a distorted sense of race relations. You know, I didn't understand that there were certain white people. I mean, of course, I understood, you know, the Bay Street Boys and some of what they did, but I didn't understand the brutality of the oppression of black people by white people until I went off to school. And then I had to double back and understand some of our history, you know, Pompeii and Poor Black Kate and right. All the rest of that stuff, you know. So I think a lot of it has to do with education, you know. I could remember as a child sitting on Clifford Park in the heat, right, for 3 hours in the heat, waiting for Princess Margaret to come to view the children. The children were just fainting all over the place. It was miserable. And then the children were made to sing Rule Britannia. You know the line that says, Britons never, never shall be slaves? The children were made to sing that, you know? So
I think that probably influences.
I know I'm rambling, right? I know I'm rambling.
We're listening to you very intently. So I want to ask you one more question before we open the floor up to our audience for questions. And it's just looking ahead. So what is your ultimate hope for the impact of Bahamian art on the future of the Bahamas? And what kind of legacy do you hope that current and future Bahamian artists will leave in addressing what the riot points are of their time?
You know, I wish I wish young Bahamian artists just express your truth. You know, I am very much pro-Bahamian. You know, I believe in the Bahamas. When there was a controversy as to who should develop the point in Eleuthera, you know, they were trying to decide whether to give it to the Holoesco family or to give it to the Disney family, you know. I was for the Holoesco family, you know, because I'm for Bahamians, you know. And I believe in Bahamians, and I believe that any thing that a young artist wants to express that is from his heart, you know, he should express it. And I think this is a time when we should encourage all of our young artists to continue to be bold and to be fearless, you know. And it's like, you know, we have so many examples of courage. You know, artists like Kendall Hanna, you know, it was difficult for him to continue to produce in a society that had no inkling of what he was doing or his genius. Or Amos Ferguson,
right.
You know, Amos, you know, Amos used to be laughed at, you know, and he'll tell you, you know, that no black Bahamians do anything good for me. You know, if it wasn't for the white man, I wouldn't have made $1. He would tell you, you know, and in spite of being ridiculed, in spite of, you know, being discouraged, he continued to produce. And, you know, he's a profile in courage, you know, with all of his contradictions. He is a great painter. And so we have a history of courage. I see some of the work some of these young artists is doing. Man, listen, it's daring, and it's fearless, and I love the spiritual stuff. You know, I love it. You know, and you know, continue. Don't let anybody discourage you. You be you, and you continue to do your thing.
I think that's a great way.
I don't know.
I think this is a great way to end our segment of the conversation. And I would like to open the floor up to questions. So does anybody?
I'm sorry I ramble so much.
You were not rambling. It was very interesting. Anybody have a question?
Good evening. I had a quick question about camaraderie for yourself. Sometimes I wonder, or I just reflect on the fact that I've inherited, and my peers have inherited, a contemporary art scene and practice that was really started by 4 or 5, maybe 6 people, you know, in the 70s. And I assume not all of that would happen by default, that there was some camaraderie in there. And I wish there was younger artists here to kind of maybe hear your answer, because it's something I struggle with at UB in my classes. I see students, sorry, I'm going to ramble for a second. I see students that when I see them working together and push each other, part of me always thinks like, man, if you guys stay friends forever, you could change the world. Like in a small way or in a big way, you could actually change the landscape of the space that we live in. And I always reflect on you growing up or coming back from school and changing the landscape that I am now a part of, and my peers and all the young artists under me are now a part of. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on the bravery that it takes to be an artist, and how camaraderie and friendship and pushing each other in that landscape, reinforcing each other in that landscape, how important that is for visual practice that develops, especially nationally and hopefully internationally.
That's a very good question. I benefited from Brent and Max mainly, but all of the older artists were always generous in this society. When I was in graduate school, Max sent June night, she was in New York at the time, and he sent her down to Philadelphia to get some of my work to put in, I think it was Matinee Gallery at the time. No, not Matinee. It was Upstairs Gallery. What was the name of that Upstairs Gallery that Brent had before Matinee? Anyway, so Brent was so encouraging. You know, he was like a big brother to all of us. He and Max, different personalities. You know, Max was sort of the quiet one who would give you the shirt off of his back. And a quick story about Max.
Go ahead.
At Carafesta, Barbados, Antonius Roberts, myself, and Max Taylor, we were painting a mural, right? And we were painting up on the scaffolds every day, painting a mural, and every day this lady would come by with a push cart, a shopping cart, an old beat-up shopping cart with all of her belongings on it and everything, and some raggedy children hanging along. And she would stop and pause, and then she would leave. And every day she would do that. And by the third day, Max jumped down off the scaffolding, and he gave her every penny he had. And the lady was just, she couldn't believe it, you know, because, of course, it meant that she could probably feed her children and do better for herself. And for the rest of the time we were in Barbados, Max had to eat sesame seeds until we were able to give him a few dollars. But I'm just saying that that's the kind of guy who he was, so that when you look at his work and you see the pain on the faces of the people that he paints and draws and depicts, it's because, you know, he feels the suffering of people, you know? And so Max and Brent, you know, Brent was one of our because artists. Because artists really brought together because we all had an Afrocentric point of reference. Of course, Brent was bilingual, right? Very eloquently bilingual. You know, he celebrated his European heritage as well. But Brent was someone who was, he and Max were key in my development. You know, they were constants. I could always go to spend time with them and get advice and encouragement. And that sort of tradition is what we in Because tried to achieve. And I see the same thing happening with you, and I know you and John Cox and Toby and all the rest of the artists of your generation, and so many of the other artists. And, you know, there's a whole tradition of artists helping artists, you know?
Is it kind of like a cohort? So if you're an artist, you had this Because group coming up, does that sense of camaraderie kind of support the development of art, like for that generation?
I think so. I think so. I think that the development of Bahamian art is right now contingent on those relationships and how they develop. You know, I would like to know that there is some communication going on between some of these artists who are really doing incredible things. The thing about Bahamian art right now is that there is a spectrum of work being done, you know, and normally you could group some artists together because they're all abstract artists, they're all surrealist artists or what have you. But on the scene now, I mean, you have I've seen some work at Turn, they show one kind of work, and then the next show you go to, and there's something completely different. And they're all young Bahamian artists, and they're all beautiful, powerful work, And so, I mean,
it helps to support.
We're
but-
blessed. We're blessed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have a question? Go ahead.
Yes, good day. Excuse me. So first and foremost, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
I
What
know-
is your name, sir?
Kenny. I know you would have mentioned you came back to the Bahamas, I believe, in 1979.
Yeah.
So naturally, now going to soon be 70 or being 70, you would have seen a lot. That's almost, I wouldn't calculate, but that's a long space of time. And naturally, I know you would have changed and evolved as an artist and a person during that time. But not to take that long story, but if you could just give some contrast as to yourself just coming back to the Bahamas and the man you are now, how has your art and your philosophy changed if you was to compare those two persons?
Boy, yeah. I wouldn't say like night and day, but when I came home, as I mentioned, there were a few artists on Bay Street, right? Painting. And then there were the Junkanoo artists on Bay Street doing their thing. And my brother Jackson used to always say that when we came home, we had to decide between going into the galleries or going into the Junkanoo shacks. And we decided to do both. And I've been blessed in getting to know the best artists in both areas. I worked side by side with the B-Cause artists and all of the other artists of my time, and I worked with the best Junkanoo artists, Percy Francis and Gus Cooper and Bernard Davis and all the other giants. And the one thing that I found, because we celebrated the Junkanoo artists, and we respected the best Junkanoo artists to be artists, which was revolutionary at the time. I would say the difference between then and now is the explosion of young artists on the scene, and the support systems that exist. Because we know that it's not easy to keep a gallery open, and we know it's not easy to keep programs like this to stimulate the arts. And ICE and what he's doing down there, Dunglet Galleries, where else? I mean, there's so many things happening to support artists in this town. When I look at, every time I turn around, Amanda's got someone going off to somewhere in the world, So, I mean, there's a difference now, There's more work being done and more support systems. Well, now that I am, my age now, I've become more selfish, I realize that the blows that I throw now have to mean something. And I don't work on, I don't accept commissions unless they really something that I really want to do in my heart. I don't work to sell paintings. I work to produce my ideas on canvas. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to be at a point where I can do that. So that is different. And I would say that this is probably the best time for me as an artist, because I do exactly what I want to do, and I do it on my own time, and I feel like I know enough now to be able to make the kind of statements that I want to make. I don't know if that answers. Yeah.
That's a very interesting, I love that answer. Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for this presentation. My name is Nyambi Hall Campbell Dean. And my question, I hope it has a little bit of nuance because I think Royann addressed it a bit. But you mentioned the project, the Lighthouse Point project. And thinking about projects like that where there may have been agitation, right, for something that was more Bahamian, and ultimately that didn't win. And then when we see that the foreign capitalists come, that they not only take over the space, but they also kind of inhabit the artists who might have been protesting against it, like they incorporate the artist, or maybe they incorporate some of more vocal voices to be a part of their project, and kind of like to say they're putting a Bahamian face on it. So what do you think is the role of the artist in cases like that, where these are artists who still do have to work, to eat? And then how can we use those artists in those spaces in ways that can also promote the riot within the larger community?
It's a powerful question. I don't criticize the artists who decide to work for Disney. After all, they are professional artists. And the work is the work. I think once those decisions are made, and whether you are happy with those decisions or not, then the artist, the individual artist, has to decide whether he feels comfortable working in that situation. But I don't see anything wrong with it.
How can they still encourage riot though? Like, how can they keep their voice within those spaces?
Well, I think the work should continue. The idea that the Hall of West Coast had, right? It wasn't approved at that location. But there's no reason why, another location might not be possible in the future, or some other project. I don't know how to answer that. I don't know how to answer that. I personally have not done any work for Disney, but I don't criticize anyone who has. Maybe if they had asked me, I might have done some for them. Maybe not. As I say, I don't really accept commissions. But I don't know how to answer that. At my age now, right? In my younger years, I used to be unforgiving, and very, very one-sided in my opinions on certain matters, But in the fullness of time, I understand that in certain situations, life works differently. Now, I will never compromise my principles or my values, you know. But in a situation like that, where a decision is made, Disney's got the job, and they have some opportunities for Bahamian artists to produce work and make some money, I don't begrudge those artists those opportunities, you know. I might be missing something, someone could tell me something to change my mind, but from where I sit, I don't see any contradictions in that.
I think it's a really good question, and it is a question that does have some nuance to it. I think that if an artist, you know, it boils down to two things. I think the first thing is that the Riot, if you choose that you're going to accept to work in that space, and there's a format in that space for art, then if you're choosing that job, then you're following the format, right? But it doesn't mean that your personal opinion in terms of what you think will express your values about what's happening in society, and you feel that other people want to know that, it's not limited to the work that you're producing in that space. So if the answer is, can you earn a living as an artist, and can you still express what it is that you would like to express, because you have the freedom to do that. You know, I think those things can be done at the same time, and one voice doesn't necessarily prohibit or, you know, reduce the other. So I think it's a really like a fine balance in understanding that, but that's up to the artist, I think, to, you know, to make that decision on. We have time for one more question. Okay, yes.
Maybe, oh, sorry.
Okay, two. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm not a junkanoo, and I'm not sure whether this is the platform to discuss it, but I like junkanoo. I'll beat up anybody who talks about it, but I'm not deep into junkanoo. So the question is there a riot brewing with the way things are with junkanoo, with things that you hear on the radio, the Valley Boys and that sort of thing? What's your opinion about that?
Is there a riot going on?
Is there a riot brewing?
Yeah, well, there's
It's
always
like
a riot.
the insider story right here.
Always a riot going on in Junkanoo, in some form of fashion. Always. Junkanoo wouldn't be Junkanoo without a riot going on, you know?
That is definitely quotable. That's a great quote. So I think that's your answer. The answer is yes, probably, but also Junkanoo. Okay. We have a question in the front, please. Thank you.
It's actually not a question. It's a really heartfelt thank you. I just wanted to say, I guess publicly, that I think about your work and the work of Jammin very frequently. I mean, honestly, maybe weekly. And not just about the visuals of it, but just the absolute power that it has given Bahamian artists. And I was really lucky that I was able to, when I worked at the DAF, work with you and work with the Jammin artists and work with that work and do some research about it and understand it more deeply, because what it showed me was that some of the conversations that are only just now starting globally, when I finished university, I mean, really, when I finished my master's, some of the conversations that were just starting then globally about finding an authentic voice, about not looking to Europe as the center of the art world, about being just finding a voice that was specific to the Bahamas and to your African heritage, then to see that you as a collective and as an individual had thought that through and actually found an incredible language, a beautiful language, a powerful language to use on this island, and to really kick off what is now a diverse group of artists that are able to speak to a voice and to a language that is specific to their narrative, whether that be from African heritage or not, that is because of you guys. And it is absolutely incredible and genius that you were so ahead of your time. And the power is still felt. And so I just wanted to tell you that me personally, I think about it all the time and I'm very, very grateful. And I can see the ripple effect through the entire of our artist community. And I think with any research, anybody would find out that without you guys, there would be none of this. This wouldn't exist. This riot here wouldn't exist. We were just kind of quietly saying that the Bahamar is its own riot. I mean, John was able to create so many people's livelihood and so many people's voices, but within a space that wouldn't normally have allowed that. And I think all of these things are really as a ripple effect of your guys' thought process, your intelligence, your bravery, and your genuine genius. So I just wanted to thank you.
Wow. You touched me to my heart, you know. I think we should end it there.
Yes, that was actually the last
Wow,
comment, and
wow,
that's a great way.
Let me-
Unless you would like to say.
Yeah, let me just say that the whole jamming experience really came about. Initially, it was my brother Jackson and myself in the Junkanoo Shacks working on costumes together. And then John Beadle came and worked on the costumes. And then we decided to go into the studio to paint using the same process that we used in the Junkanoo Shacks. And then we incorporated Antonius and Brent into the mix. And then Jackson passed and Brent passed. And then it was Antonius, John Beadle, and myself left. But the whole, and you really touched my heart with that, you know, I'm really appreciative of that. I think it really goes back to what your other half was saying about camaraderie. And I guess that's why you two are such a powerful couple, because you're on the same wavelength. It's about relationships, and it's about our ability to come together, you know. Our motto even says, forward, up, and onward together. And so it's a very Bahamian thing to collaborate and to create beautiful things. And I've never heard that kind of compliment before. Thank you so much. And thank you for the work that you produce. And you, one of those artists who's throwing down, you know. And I don't know, between the two of you, which one, you know, I mean, it's a powerful, powerful combination. Thank you so much.
Wow, I love this. I love all of this. This is a great way to end our talk today. Stan, I cannot thank you enough for accepting the invitation to come and sit with me today. And then, you know, just providing such thoughtful answers.
You're the best.
Thank
You're
you.
the best. It was an easy decision.
Thank you. Y'all do not understand how much nerve I had to build up to ask him to participate today. And I am not a shy person, but I had to, like, you know, shore up some nerves to do that. So I really, really appreciate it. Just the thoughtfulness of your responses, and just know that we deeply appreciate your opinions and just, you know, all the work that you've done. I think Tessa really articulated it very well. And even those of us who are not artists, but we do appreciate art and we appreciate what you and, you know, and your colleagues in the creative community have done for us. So I want to just thank you very, very much.
I wanted to say one last thing. Most of you know that I did 2 exhibitions with May Street Projects Gallery,
Yes.
and the catalog that represents those 2 exhibitions, we should begin. It was really edited by Christina Wong,
Wong.
who's in the audience. some of those should be in towards the end of the summer. So hopefully, we'll be able to get them out for people to see. That was a real joy working with Jose Maestri,
And it is an amazing show. I don't know if it's still up or not, but it was a really incredible show.
No, it's not up.
It was a great show. I mean, are we talking about the same?
Yeah.
Oh yes,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
That was a great show.
yeah, yeah. Thank you.
So again, Stan, thank you very much for
Thank you
your
very
time
much,
today.
yeah.
We really appreciate it. I want to thank you all for coming today and asking such great questions. It's always the questions that come from the audience are like, we have a great audience. And I also want to thank the team at The Current for hosting as usual. John and team, you mentioned that, it's spaces like this that keep these conversations alive, and having programming to support the creative community development. So I want to thank you all for continuing to do that. And once again, thank you. If you want to stay up to date with what's happening with the Inspired By talks, you can follow The Current at Current242 on Instagram, or you can go to inspiredbyconvos.com and sign up to stay up to date. And with that, thanks again and get home safely.